We talk a lot about duplicate payments, but not so much about duplicate invoices. This is unfortunate, as one of the unsavory outcomes of receiving more than one copy of an invoice is a duplicate payment. Stick around until the end when we talk about one questionable invoice practice that more than a few suppliers are using to trick you into making a duplicate payment. Once you know what it is, you'll be able to protect against it. Hey guys, I'm Mary Schaefer, founder of AP Now, your one-stop shop for cutting-edge business intelligence if you work in, manage, or have responsibility for the accounts payable and or payment function. So what is this problem that I'm talking about? Duplicate copies of invoices. AP now estimates that 25% of all invoices received by companies are duplicates, and they're duplicates of invoices that are not past due. They're just multiple copies of the same invoice, either emailed to several different people or emailed to and mailed, put through the snail mail. Okay. This has become a huge problem because it creates a lot of extra work for the accounts payable team, non-value add work, by the way, that virtually no company is adding staff to handle. And occasionally those invoices slip through, those second copies slip through, and a duplicate payment is made. And as you know, duplicate payments are rarely returned. But I'm not going to go down that road just now. Okay, so what can you do? There are steps that you can take, and I'm going to go through them. They're pretty easy. Number one, encourage your suppliers to email invoices and email invoices only. This eliminates the snail mail. It gets that paper out, and it will eliminate some of the duplicate copies of your invoices. Not all of them, because you're still going to have the folks who email it to several different places. And of course, when you encourage your folks to email invoices, you're going to give them an email address, a unique email address that takes only invoices, is not used for anything else. Okay, so encourage emailed invoices only, big emphasis on only. And there are some other benefits for that, but I'm not going to go off on a tangent, or at least I'm going to try not to. Step number two, weed out the duplicates as early as possible in the process. And the reason for this is the earlier that you weed them out, the less time you waste processing them, because the last thing you want to do is go through all your different steps of processing them and then at the last minute realize, oh, this is a duplicate, and then you have to throw it out. Better than making the payment, definitely, but a lot of wasted effort for no added value other than you didn't make the duplicate payment. Okay, next step. It's pretty simple. Ask them to stop. Once you've figured out who these people are who are sending multiple copies of invoices, you can just ask them to stop. You can either call up or you can send an email requesting only one copy of the invoice be paid. Now, of course, if it's after the due date, the vendor is within their rights to send a second copy of the invoice, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about organizations that pay on time through the normal course of business, getting 3 copies of the same invoice before the due date. Okay, so ask them to stop. A little extra effort, but it will pay off. Next step, after you've asked them to stop and they keep doing this, identify the repeat offenders, okay? And you want to identify these repeat offenders because you're going to have to give them some extra special attention to make sure that you don't double pay. So identify these repeat offenders, and I'll tell you what to do with them a little bit later. You also want to identify, and this can be a real problem, those sneaky suppliers who send the second copy of that invoice, not in the beginning when they send it to 4 different people, but either on the due date or right before the due date. And they send the second copy, I believe, many of them, with the hope that you'll think it's a rush, you'll think you've missed the invoice, and you'll make a second payment. Okay. Now, sometimes if you've talked to them, they'll say, well, it's just a reminder. And, my instinct is to say, well, don't remind me unless I haven't paid. Don't help me, because your help isn't really help. You have to be a little bit more polite than that. Okay. But you want to identify these guys, and you really want to keep a close eye on them. Because you may make a duplicate payment. Now, before we move on, I just want to share with you that we tackle big accounts payable and payment issues on this channel on every Tuesday and Thursday, and occasionally on Saturdays where we have a little Wordle fun. Okay? Our next step is once you've identified your repeat offenders, be they just repeat offenders or these sneaky guys sending them at the last minute, you want to have another conversation with them, and I call it threaten, but you probably be a little bit more polite than me, to put them on the ACT list. I call the ACT list the always check thoroughly list. This is a list of vendors who you're going to double check every single one of their invoices before you make a payment to make sure that you don't duplicate pay it. And the end result of this, you might share with them, is that the payment will be delayed because you're having to do this double checking. Now you can say it nicely to them, but at the end of the day, you don't want to make a duplicate payment. And if you need to do this double checking, it may end up delaying their payment. And that is not what they want. Because after all, at the end of the day, well, yeah, it would be nice if you pay them twice. Really, what they're trying to do, most of them, is just get paid. And so the best way in this case to get paid is not to send multiple copies of the same invoice. Okay, so now after you've done all this, you've gone through all your steps that I've suggested, maybe a few of your own that you've come up with. And if you have some extra tactics that might work, feel free to share it in the comments below so that we can all benefit from this. And you've got your list now. You're not getting so many duplicate copies of invoices, and you can rest on your laurels, right? Wrong, because these duplicate invoices, I like to say, are like weeds. No matter how much you work on them, you pull them, you try and train them to do the right thing. No matter what you do, you can never get rid of them completely. Companies that send them will either, maybe they hired a new person, and that person comes in and they think, oh, this is a great idea, or somebody comes up with this idea, or a company that wasn't sending duplicate invoices now starts doing it. So the problem never goes away. You just have to stay on top of it, just like weeds, to try and make sure that you keep it under control. Because when you go and you ask a company to stop sending duplicate copies of invoices to you, and even when you threaten them and you say, well, hey, we're going to put you on the ACT list, and this is going to ultimately end up slowing down payments, if it is their policy and their procedure to send these duplicate invoices, in all likelihood, they are not going to make this one change just to accommodate you for your special requirements. So you got to stay on top of it. So repeat, go back, encourage the emailed invoices, talk to them, identify the offenders, and keep at it. Now, maybe someday we'll get to the point where this isn't an issue, but I don't see it in the next few years. Now, as you can tell from the details involved in this one small part of the accounts payable process, there are lots of practices that you should be using to run a best practice operation. That's why AP Now is devoting the month of March to best practices, and we'll be releasing a new video each day that focuses on some best practice. Now, before you get too impressed, some of these are going to be short. Okay, well, to be honest, most of them are going to be short. In fact, they're less than a minute, because they'll be what's called a YouTube short, and they must be under a minute to qualify for that. But by the end of the month, we'll have 31 days, 8 longer videos, and 23 short tips. We're going to put them all on a playlist, both the long ones and the short ones, which you can watch right now using the link that will appear momentarily on your YouTube screen and is in the show notes below. As always, we appreciate your thumbs up, your comments, your subscribes, and your shares. Good luck.